Yo, what's going on everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Okay, so we gotta talk about how Pokemon Go has been doing in 2023. Believe it or not, this year is already halfway done, and I do think that when it comes to Pokemon Go, there was a ton of ups and downs. I wanted to talk about this year in review and just kind of give my thoughts on how the game can improve for the rest of the year, and I really do hope that Niantic is listening because there's a lot of great ideas that I wanted to share, and I really do think there's a couple of things that Niantic needs to avoid. That's what this video is going to be all about, so let's roll the intro and get right into it. Alright, let's talk about 2023. So, there was a lot of stuff that was added to Pokemon Go or updated within Pokemon Go this year, but I wanted to talk about a key couple of things that I really think stand out. When it comes to Pokemon Go, I would say that it is doing fairly well. If you think about how it's doing in terms of gameplay, in terms of the content that's been added to Pokemon Go, but in terms of player sentiment and a couple of things that Niantic did, I would actually make the argument that the game is in a worse state than it has ever been. So let's go over a couple of things that I feel define the first half of 2023. Starting off with Pokemon Go Tour. This was the first key event of Pokemon Go this year, the second of which is going to be, of course, the upcoming Pokemon Go Fest. But the Pokemon Go Tour this year was a little bit different compared to previous years in that they had a live in-person experience. This, of course, happened in Las Vegas, and I actually attended that event, and it was a lot of fun for the most part. Like, there was a lot of cool things with this event, like the introduction of Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon, which I'll get more into later, but there was a lot of other stuff that allowed you to really enjoy the game in an in-person experience. But of course, that event is currently remembered for one thing: the plethora of issues that were related to the game during that event. On top of players having connectivity issues, it seemed like there was a lot of bugged content, and I really do think that when it came to this event, it needed a lot of polish, and it's something that I really hope Niantic takes into consideration going into Pokemon Go Fest, because that event is set to be a lot bigger. There's currently 3 in-person events that are going to be happening for Pokemon Go Fest, one in Osaka, Japan, the other in London, and of course the third in New York. I'm going to be attending the New York City one, and I'm really concerned about the other 2 because those 2 are going to be happening on the same day. It was already hard enough that Niantic tried to handle one live in-person event at the beginning of this year, but now we're gonna have 2 in-person events happening at the same time. I seriously hope that the game is stable during those events because there is a lot riding on Pokemon Go Fest this year. Now, I mentioned earlier that Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon were introduced into Pokemon Go. I actually think this is the second biggest highlight of 2023 so far, mainly because both of these Pokemon are extremely powerful, and by far they've made a lot of different aspects of Pokemon Go incredibly easy. I mean, the game has changed from a gameplay point of view after the introduction of these 2 super powerful Mega Evolutions, or technically they're called Primal Reversions, but they're basically the same thing. I have to say, like, this is the direction that the game is going in, where a lot of gameplay is going to become obsolete as more and more powerful Pokemon get released, and it's going to be up to Niantic to continue to challenge their players with different mechanics and a lot more difficulties. Speaking of which, that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, and that is Shadow Raids. I really do like the introduction of Shadow Raids. I really feel like this added a new element to Pokemon Go, in which there is a power creep now, where there's going to be much more difficult content getting released, and it's going to be up to players to get better at the game, to have much better Pokemon in their collection in order to keep up with all of these new mechanics. The introduction of Shadow Mewtwo as a raid boss was pretty big, because originally, getting a Shadow Mewtwo required you to participate in a paid event, and that event was, of course, Pokemon Go Fest a couple of years ago, and a lot of players were anticipating when they would be able to catch Shadow Mewtwo again, and now it was a part of raid battles, and I really hope that it comes back in Shadow Raids. So yeah, overall, I think Shadow Raids was a big plus for Niantic and Pokemon Go. The only issue that I have with it is, of course, the fact that it is in-person only. The fact that a lot of people who live in low population areas, like rural areas, have no way of doing these Shadow Raids, I really think that's a big disappointment. Sure, they could do 1 and 3 star Shadow Raids, but when it comes to the legendary Shadow Raids, those are the ones that matter, and unfortunately, if you live in a low low population area where you can't get players together, you're going to have an extremely difficult time taking down these legendary raid bosses. Now, the one thing that would have made shadow raids just that much better is the ability to invite players with remote raid passes, and that is the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and probably the biggest thing that has defined 2023 so far, and that is, of course, the nerf to remote raid passes. Earlier this year, Niantic decided to make the prices of remote raid passes almost double, and then they limited it so that you can only do 5 per day. The reasoning behind this is not for profit, but mainly to fall in line with their core philosophies for Pokémon GO, in that it is an outdoor exploration game, and they did not want players to just simply get all of their content at home. Of course, this particular decision was met with a lot of controversy. A lot of players were really unhappy with the idea of them nerfing remote raid passes, mainly because it was their primary avenue for all of the legendary raid content. And unfortunately for people who live in rural areas or people who are disabled, they no longer had access to a lot of legendary raids. And on top of that, this was a huge quality of life update once it first arrived during COVID. And I really feel like a lot of players just made it a part of their Pokémon GO experience, and for that to get nerfed down, it was incredibly jarring, and a lot of players felt like Niantic was completely out of touch. And 100% I agree with that, because when it comes to Pokémon GO, the gameplay has changed dramatically since before COVID, and Niantic has kind of not seen that. They kind of want to bring the game back to what it originally was, and I really feel like that's not the right move. Because of the change in landscape, I really feel like Niantic needed to adapt rather than try to go back. So hopefully Niantic will come up with some better systems, because when it comes to the remote raid passes, it has done some unfixable damage to the game's popularity as well as the sentiments within the Pokemon GO community. So where do we go from here? Well, first and foremost, there's a lot of stuff that's on the horizon for Pokemon GO that I'm really curious about. There is, of course, Pokemon GO Fest, which is going to be happening within about a month. I really do think that it's going to make or break Pokemon GO for the entire year. If they provide us a really solid Pokemon GO Fest experience, I feel like it could make up for some of the damage that's already been done because of remote raid passes as well as the Hoenn Tour Las Vegas event, and I really do think that Niantic needs the big win. We also have what's going to be the major highlight of that event, and that is of course Mega Rayquaza. With the introduction of Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon, naturally they're going to continue that trend by adding another very powerful Mega Evolution, and this time it could potentially be the strongest Pokemon in the game. I also like the fact that they're introducing Mega Rayquaza with some unique mechanics, like with the Meteorite system. I really do think this is going to add a new element of endgame content for Pokemon GO, and I'm excited to see what else they have in store. Because Mega Rayquaza was one of those Mega Evolutions that a lot of players were highly anticipating, and it's not even the only one. One of these days, we're going to be getting Mega Mewtwo, and I do think that's going to generate an insane amount of hype. And then finally, we also have routes coming to Pokemon GO, and I predict that it's going to be in the game before Pokemon GO Fest. Mainly because I do think there's going to be elements of routes that's going to play a role in Pokemon GO Fest, and I really do hope that this particular mechanic is going to be a stellar hit for Pokemon GO, because I do think from a gameplay point of view, Pokemon GO has definitely gotten a bit stale, and I do think routes is a great way to freshen it up. I mean, I've made countless videos about Pokemon showcases. I really think that has done some good for Pokemon GO, but it's a very small mechanic and a very small feature that doesn't necessarily require a ridiculous amount of effort, but when it comes to routes, I really do think there's a lot of potential there. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to when it comes to Pokemon GO, but I wanted to be cautiously optimistic because when it comes to Niantic's track record this year, there's been an insane amount of ups and downs, mostly downs. And I really do hope Niantic finishes the year strong with a bunch of home runs, because there's certainly been a lot of swing and misses this year. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. I wanted to share my thoughts regarding the first half of 2023, but I would love to know what you are thinking down below. How do you rate the first half of 2023 for Pokemon GO? Definitely share those thoughts in the comments, and let's have a great discussion. And if you ended up enjoying this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then do consider checking out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon GO, like with remote raids, then do consider becoming a patron on my Patreon. And yeah, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.